George, message of the hour. Brother Ben Early.
The sermon title this morning is Has God Moved? That may be a question you've been asking over the last weeks and time. Where's God in all of the things that's taking place? Matthew 28:20 says, "And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age." Gloria and I was counting up last night how many times we have moved. We've been in 6 different states and we've moved 20 different times. And we weren't for sure if that included everything. But sometimes when you move, you have to start all over. Make a new friends, make new doctors, dentists. And it's a constant change. But God promises us that He will never, ever change. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. In the Old Testament, Exodus 13, God could easily be found because He was in a cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. Later, they put Him in a box and carried Him from place to place. And in the New Testament, we find God, Jesus Christ's Son, on Calvary's cross. In the day and age in which we live, we want to contain God. And we try to keep God within the 4 walls of a building called the church. But God is bigger than that. He's bigger than anything that you can imagine throughout the world. Even in times of crisis like the country is in today, we feel that God has left us. Some would say, well, God's in heaven, isn't He? And they're partially right. But also, He's right beside each and every one of you that's watching this morning. Where does God live? As we look at that this morning, that gives us light in the darkness. It gives us hope in Jesus that Jesse talked about. And it gives us hope for the future. Nothing can separate us from the love of God. The Lord is with us today. They can quarantine each of us from one another, but we will never be quarantined from God Himself. There was a little boy who was getting ready to go into the pet shop. He was told he could have a puppy, and he was so excited about that. His mom pulled the car up to the front door. It was interesting. It was very careful because she wheeled out a little wheelchair that just fit him and wheeled him inside. But this was his day. He had been told he could have any puppy in the store. The man that ran the store was not happy to have to deal with one so young. But the little boy looked at Evercade and he said, "Nope, that's not the one I want. Nope, that's not him." And finally the man said, "You've looked at every puppy in the store. Would you make up your mind?" And the little boy looked over in the very corner of a cage. And there was a puppy in the back corner that was all cowered down, very small from the rest of them, obviously the litter of the group. And the little boy said, "That's the one. That's the one that I want." And the man said, "Son, you don't want that puppy. He's not well." The puppy tried to get up and walk, and his legs wouldn't hold him. And the little boy says, "I don't care. That's the one I want." And finally, after arguing with the man, and his mother said he could have anyone that he wanted, the man put him in his arms and said, "How's a little boy like you going to take care of a puppy like that?" And the little boy looked and smiled and said, "Love will find a way." As we go through this time that we're in our country and in our churches, we ask, has God moved? He says, of course I haven't. Love's going to find a way. The love of God always finds a way. You see, God lives where men and women, boys and girls, sick and healthy, sad and unhappy, fear, afraid, hope. He lives there in their lives. He lives in the nursing homes, which doors are locked now. No one can go in and visit anymore. not even family members. But he says, I'm in there with them. I'm walking with them. I'm taking care of them for you. Don't worry. I've got this. God speaks our language. He speaks the languages of every nationality. He doesn't ever compromise with the world today. He tells us to come out and to be separate, even in difficult times. God says, I have the hope you need, and my love will find a way. God this morning gives us faith, trust, and hope. When we meet one challenge, he holds another one up for us and says, now meet that one. But he is on duty 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And he's right where he's always been, with those who are his children and with those that he's waiting for to come to him. We ask, Lord, where do you live? And he says, I live in your home. I know about the coronavirus. I know all the changes that's taking place in the country. Some of those will be good in the future. Some of it's not good. But I know your fears. I know your disappointments. But don't leave me out at this time. I'm the one that has the answers for you. Your strength. And during this time, we tend to get addicted to many things, being all boxed in a house. But God says, get addicted to me. How many times have you said, I wish I had more time to spend with God? I wish I had more time to pray, to read my Bible. And God says, you have the time. Do that now. Jesus is involved in our life, in your house, in your home. And he knows the heartache that's there, the unrest, the frustration, the fear, the loss of jobs, salary. God knows how you treat one another during this time. And when stress and problems seem to take over. But he says, I'm there. God is there. It's been amazing during this time with the truckers and the truck drivers who have stood up and made sure we have what we need and have spent hours on the road trying to make sure that they can be used and serve their country. God is with them. God tells us that Satan is alive and well and roaming like a lion, seeking to see who he can devour during this time. He says, I live in your place of work. Some of them are empty now. Some of them have people there still trying to work. But he says, I'm there. I'll take care of you. I live on the battlefield. We seem to forget because the news is just about the virus. But there's still wars taking place in other countries. And he says, your soldiers, I'm there. I'm there with them. I'm there with you in every country. He says, I know the loneliness that many of you are feeling right now. But he says, I have that covered because it says in the Bible, I am your strength. He says, I'm in the hospital, the ships, the makeshift hospitals. I'm there preparing for those who will come in ill. But I am the great physician. Don't ever forget that. I've stood beside the doctors, the surgeons, the nurses. I've knelt on the floors for those who have to clean up the floors, clean under the beds, and clean the beds, and clean up the messes. I'm there with them as well. And I know the exhaustion that they're beginning to feel. Even the helplessness when there seems to be no answers. I'm also in the labs where they're trying to find a cure. I'm there as we stand and as they work. I'm there directing them if they will listen. I'm reaching out to those who know me, and they know they can rely on me because I certainly have not moved. I live at the place where you pray. It's a lonely place. You need to come there more often and spend time on your knees with me. This church has become my sanctuary during this time. It's hard because I come in here and see all the empty pews and I'm the only one here. But I pray, and I pray for each one of you, many of you that are watching. I go to the pews where you sit and I pray for you because this is a time of prayer. He says, I live in the poor housing with all races. I live with you. You're never alone. If you will let me, nothing will ever separate us. God and Jesus is not way out yonder somewhere, sitting in heaven and watching what we're doing and treating us like little puppets. He's here and with each one of us. And he has a plan, he tells us in the Bible, for our lives. Not to hurt us, not to harm us, but he has a plan for us to carry out. He wants to walk with us. He wants to talk with us every moment of every day. If you will just let him in. He says, I stand at the door and knock. Let me in. In fear, we have closed that door, I'm afraid. We have not listened to God. We have not let our faith lead us. And we need to do that beginning now together. We have been busy and preoccupied. God has spoken this week and we didn't listen because fear has gripped our nation. God says, I've cast out all fear. I live where you fear, where you live. Let me in. My love will find a way. There's nothing you and I can't handle together. 1 Peter 5:7 says, cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. It was the evening of August 3rd, 1992. 8 men lined up for the first semifinal of a 400-meter race at the Olympic Games in Barcelona. Derek Redmond, a British runner, a medal contender. He burst out of the starting line like he had been shot out of a rifle. He was going to win the gold medal. He was the favorite. He'd been training, he'd been preparing for this time. Just as he was getting close to the finish line, his hamstring muscle ripped, and 250 meters from the finish, he collapsed on the track. For long moments, he laid there trying to get to his feet as the other runners ran past him. He finally was able to get to his feet and headed to the finish line, walking as only an injured man could walk. The other runners were done, the race was finished, but he was still on the track, trying to go to the finish line. His father was in the stands at that time. He got up and ran down the stairs, climbed over the security, and climbed over the fence to his son. And arm in arm, they walked together to the finish line. Derek Redmond didn't win a medal that day, but he finished the race a winner because his father had come and given him his strength to finish the race. God is giving us determination. He reaches out his hand to us and says, take my hand and walk with me. You and I have got this covered. The athlete says, I will run through my pain. The pastor says, I will help you through it. The Sunday school teacher says, I will make it to the finish line with my kids because I want to be remembered, not for winning, but for finishing well. Just believe me when I say this too will pass. Because God says to us, lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. And I will be handling this with you in every moment in the days ahead.